Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. We're going to do something, well, honestly, truly fascinating. We are going to deconstruct a piece of history. And I'm not talking about a grand monument or some famous general's diary, but a 100-year-old bureaucratic ledger from the First World War. Now, at first glance, it might just look like a crumbling book filled with faded ink. But as we're going to see, it's actually a profoundly moving grid of data that reveals the hidden, everyday human stories of World War I. Let's get right into it.
All right, right off the bat, just looking at the opening page, there's a handwritten note. And simply reading these two dates, 4th August 1914 and 11th November 1918, instantly anchors us in the exact chronological timeframe of the Great War. It's essentially the starting gun and the final whistle of a conflict that completely reshaped the globe. But what makes this so captivating is that this massive world-altering event is being contained right here within the fragile paper of a single hand-stitched notebook.
Section 1. Uncovering the Ledger. Physical Layout and Intent. To really grasp the lives trapped in these pages, we've got to look at the architecture of the book itself. We've taken that incredibly faded, century-old cursive and translated it into a clear digital table. Think of this as the master key to reading the entire artifact. Every single man who entered this ledger was sorted into 5 strict columns: serial number, name of village, identity, which included their name, their father's name, and their caste, their unit, and finally, the remarks. Just think about the incredible standardization here. The British imperial military machine needed a way to process tens of thousands of individuals, essentially turning complex human lives into manageable rows of data.
Section 2. Who were these men? The individuals behind the data. Now, focusing on the individuals themselves, check out the middle column. Notice those little letters S/O. That literally stands for son of. It's wild because it brilliantly shows how identity was recorded through lineage back then. A soldier wasn't just an individual. He was the direct extension of his family, permanently tethered to his father's name. You see names like Chandan Singh, son of Chandan Singh, or Ramat Ali, son of Sher Ali. In a vast, totally impersonal war machine, this column firmly anchored these men to their specific families and their ancestral roots.
Section 3. The Hierarchy of Service. Military Organization.
Moving across the page to the unit column, we hit the strict hierarchy of the military force. You're going to see one word repeated over and over again: sepoy. Now, a sepoy was an infantry private, basically the standard foot soldier of the British Indian Army. These were the men bearing the absolute brunt of the marching, the trench building, and of course the frontline combat. Understanding this term is so crucial because it represents the vast majority of the young men meticulously logged in this book. But sprinkled right in there amongst the sepoys, you'll also spot the rank of havildar. Think of this as the equivalent to a sergeant. These guys held absolutely critical leadership and non-commissioned officer positions. They were the glue keeping the units together under immense pressure. Seeing this rank helps us realize that this ledger is capturing the entire operational ecosystem of these regiments, from the raw recruits all the way up to the seasoned leaders. And this actually leads to a much broader realization about the whole war effort. Alongside combat ranks like sepoy, havildar, and sowar, which by the way was a cavalryman, the ledger meticulously records these heavy, absolutely essential support roles. You see entries for sweeper and bugler. It's just a powerful reminder that armies don't just fight, they require immense logistical and sanitary support just to exist. The ledger treats the combatant and the sweeper with the exact same bureaucratic equality. They're both just another row in the book.
Section 4. Deciphering the Fates. The Remarks column.
Finally, we reach the rightmost edge of the page, and wow, this is where the emotional weight of this entire artifact really hits you. Just look at the mundane administrative notes captured here. Return after taking pension, or came back on account of striking the name. It is incredibly striking to see how, for some of these men, the end of their horrific wartime experience was reduced to nothing more than the casual stroke of a bureaucratic pen. They survived, they returned, and they were simply crossed off the active list. The banality of the language completely masks what they must have actually endured. But if you read just a little further down, the reality really begins to bleed through the ink. You start seeing the immense physical toll of the conflict recorded super casually in remarks like, returned by wounded, and unfit for service have been taken pension. These men survived the war, yes, but their lives were forever altered. The ledger doesn't tell us if they lost a limb or suffered from a gas attack. It simply recategorizes them from an active asset to a pension liability. There is such a stark visual juxtaposition here. I mean, in one row, we have the totally mundane reality, returned by pension, And then, directly below it, literally the very next line or on the next page, this tragic reality. Died with fever. The clerk's handwriting doesn't change, there's zero shift in tone. The profound difference between a life lived out in peace and a life cut tragically short is separated by mere millimeters of ink on paper. When we kind of zoom out and summarize the grim realities across all these pages, a pretty startling picture emerges. Yeah, you definitely see died in war, meaning active combat. But disease? Disease was a massive killer. Died with fever and died in hospital appear over and over again. It completely shatters that Hollywood myth that every casualty happened in some heroic charge over the trenches. For so many of these soldiers, the greatest enemy was microscopic. And it's fascinating how this ledger completely strips away the grand geopolitical scale of the war. Take this entry, died in hospital of Gahari, referencing a very specific, localized place. A soldier's ultimate sacrifice, all of his hopes and his family's lineage, are suddenly reduced to a localized three-word scribble. It's incredibly humbling to see a human life summarized so abruptly. Yet, at the exact same time, this document highlights the astonishing geographical reach of the war. We see an entry noting a soldier who died in Mesopotamia. I mean, just think about the journey of that young man. From a small village in colonial India, shipped entirely across the sea, only to lose his life in the deserts of the Middle East, so far from everything he knew. The scope of this single fragile ledger is truly staggering.
Section 5. Bureaucracy and Remembrance. The Ledger's Legacy. Stepping back to look at the macro perspective, it becomes clear that the bureaucracy of war extended way, way beyond the battlefield. Look at notes like, granted by the name of his mother after he died, and his wife taking his pension. The ledger begins to bleed into the financial realities of the women left behind. The military machine had to account for the collateral impact of death, effectively turning grieving mothers and widows into the new subjects of this administrative grid.
Let's pause on this specific phrase again. Came back on account of striking the name. It is chillingly cold, isn't it? It's this completely detached language used by the ledger clerks to describe the ultimate trajectory of these human lives. There is no sentimentality here. It is pure function. And yet, it's the very coldness of this language that makes the document so emotionally powerful for us to read a full century later. So, what does this all mean? Distilling the key points here, this artifact's legacy is absolutely undeniable. It perfectly brackets the war from August 1914 to November 1918. It levels the playing field, documenting the vital sweeper right next to the combatant Havildar. But most importantly, this mundane grid of lines perfectly encapsulates the whole paradox of war, reducing the most profound human tragedies and the loss of young lives to incredibly brief, almost invisible ink remarks. Which leaves us with this final thought. When we study history, we so often look for the great speeches or the dramatic, sweeping photographs. But as this explainer has shown, sometimes the truth is hiding in a spreadsheet. How do the cold, administrative columns of bureaucratic documents shape our emotional memory of historical tragedies? The next time you see a statistic about a historical event, I challenge you to look past the numbers and try to picture the real, breathing human lives forever trapped behind the ink. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.